A game so good, people forgot how to celebrate. Let's go around the horn.
Hey, Maben got a hit. Give him credit. He connected with a pitch. That's saying something.
It's Around the Horn, the show of competitive banter. Here's Tony Reale.
The greatest World Series game since... Anybody? You want to nominate something?
Joe
Game
Carter.
7 last year.
Probably Game 7 last year. 2 games ago. Yes, Frank, I still right. The greatest game in 2 games. Sure.
2011.
Astros 7, Dodgers 6 in 11 innings. It's all in play for us, but we're going to start with Dave Roberts and how he used his bullpen. Pulling Rich Hill after 4, using every arm, going to Jansen in the 8th, asking for 6 outs, using every other arm. It's a bullpen that was on a record scoreless streak, but it's something John Smoltz on the telecast was certainly drilling down on, that Roberts was asking for an awful lot. So, Ramona, we're going to start with you. You were there. Did Dave Roberts ask too much of his bullpen, or was this more about the Astros bats waking up and cracking the code?
Yeah, he has a lot of his bullpen, but if you're going to win a World Series, you need to deliver a lot. Like, if you talk to Kenley Jansen after the game, he would say, I've got to get that done. I know that's a lot to ask, but if I want to win this and be compared to Mariano Rivera and be in the same conversation, you've got to get that save there. You've just got to come through. And I think this really, though, came down to the fact that the game was decided with Josh Fields and Brandon McCarthy on the mound, and they had nobody else in the pen. And those two, I mean, Brandon McCarthy wasn't even on the postseason roster the last 2 rounds. So for him to be in there with the last guy standing and giving up the what turned out to be the game-winning home run, like, that's more on the organization for making the decision to have him as their guy there, to add him to that World Series roster, and he wasn't able to deliver.
But overall, do you see this as a game the Dodgers let it get away from them and that they're going to regret?
I mean, they were leading when they had 2 hits in the ball game. Like, Justin Verlander threw a gem, and yet the 2 hits he gave up, obviously, that's how they should have won that game, and they would have felt like they snuck one out, right? Like, in the first, when Chris Taylor dives and the ball goes off his cap and goes straight to Jock Peterson, like, this was a game where everything was breaking right for the Dodgers. If they won it, they would have been lucky to win it, but they couldn't hold the lead, and if you're trying to win a World Series, that's what you have to pull those games out.
Clinton Yates, did you find yourself questioning how David Roberts went to the bullpen?
A little bit, but let's also not forget about that play where Puig dropped that ball, changing what would have gone on in terms of how he was instituting his bullpen. So there were breaks that went the other way against the Dodgers as well. I just think that Dave Roberts is a little too committed to acting like he's a little smarter than everybody here. We all know you can press buttons with that bullpen, but we also all know that Rich Hill probably didn't get the chance that he should have here. I just didn't understand why Roberts was so pressed to use every single guy, because if it had gone any longer, he didn't have anybody else. That is not an option when you're trying to win a World Series game. He went too far.
Ramona, I saw you make a face when Clinton brought up the Rich Hill removal. That was in 4 innings, and I know you were at the game. Maybe you didn't see it. The TV cameras caught Rich Hill. He was really upset about that.
Yeah, he was upset, but that's how they've been using him the entire time. And part of the reason why they do that is because he's different the first time you see him. But when hitters get another look at him the second time through the lineup, they tend to figure him out. And I think they had Maeda lined up to go. They were right in the middle of the order where they got the right-handers up. So you lined up exactly the way they would want to.
I'll guarantee you there's a panelist in New York City who questions the move a manager makes. Go ahead, Frank Isola.
Yeah, far be it from me to question a manager that has won, entering last night, 112 games. But think about it. He's okay with his starting pitcher only getting 12 outs, but he wants his closer to get 6 outs. Rich Hill should have stayed in the game longer, number one. And if you're going to bring Jansen in, your closer, in the 8th inning, bring him in to start the 8th inning. Why are you waiting until somebody gets on base? Then you bring him in. These relievers are creatures of habit. Let them start the inning.
Bob Ryan, your view of it.
He did only what every other manager would have done at some point, or has done at some point, because this is the way baseball is played now. Hill was victimized by the 3rd time around syndrome. Whether you like it or not, that was the theory behind that. They got 3 shutout innings into the 8th inning, and then the things started to happen. And if Jansen does his job, we're not having this conversation. I do not hold Dave Roberts accountable for something that I happen to feel that any other manager in baseball was quite capable of doing in this comparable situation.
Meanwhile,
that's that.
Astros bats are awake. And I got to ask you, Bob, can this one win and the way it played out change the series?
I don't think it has anything to do with anything. They're independent. Every day is independent. Every day depends on who's starting, the pitcher, how the pitchers go. No, this is no momentum that doesn't exist. This is just a game played.
Same question to you, Frank.
Might be a 7-game series.
Yeah, and by the way, a guy from Boston is not going to second-guess Dave Roberts, who a million years ago stole that base against the Yankees. So we know he's not going there. I'm still pretty confident in the Dodgers. To me, they have the best pitcher in the series. The Astros had to win this game last night because they had pitched Keuchel and they had pitched Verlander. I still think the Dodgers will get at least one game. The series comes back to L.A.
Clinton Yates.
I don't want to harp on this, but Rich Hill had struck out Altuve twice. He had him on skates. He was doing fine. Altuve comes in the game after that. He hits a bomb, so there's that.
Yeah.
I think the Dodgers are fine. They're still a better baseball team. I'm not that, this was a win the Astros had to have, as Frank mentioned.
Ramona Shelburne.
I don't know. You go into the American League Park. Now they've got the DH. Their bats are awake. They're a different team when they're at home, and they've been a great team at home in the postseason. And I actually think the pitching matchups favor the Astros at this point with McCullers and Morton, and then you come back with Keuchel in Game 5. Like McCullers, they were great in the LCS, and so I think you get here and you're the Dodgers. I think there will be a Game 6 at Dodger Stadium, but that was a pivotal game for them in Game 2 to really put the pressure on the Astros there.
I mean, we had 8 home runs in the game. That's a major league record. We had 5 home runs in extra innings. I think going into 17 home runs in extra innings all time in the World Series, 5 in this game. So for the question of where this game ranks all time, I'm wondering if any of you think it is an all-time great or whether Game 2 kind of makes it difficult to be, Bob.
Well, who can forget Game 8 in 1912? We all remember that was a great game, Red Sox and the Giants. Who can forget Game 6 in 1947? Bill Bevins comes within one strike of throwing a no-hitter. Who can forget Game 6 in 1975, which we all know about? Who can forget Game 7 in 1991? Who can forget, and I'm very, very serious now, let's not forget Game 6 in 2011.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. The
oh
forgotten
my God.
series,
that,
the Texas
that,
Rangers.
That game, that
St.
could
Louis.
be the winner. But this is in the discussion. But don't forget 1912. That was a hell of a game.
Huge year.
Frank Gaisole.
Bob's unbelievable. First of all, it needs to be an elimination game, and I love how he just completely skipped over 1986 Game 6, Mets against the Red Sox. 30 years later, Game 7, Cubs, Indians. I like those two games.
Clinton Yates.
For me, it's still Joe Carter, and I like 2001 Lugo, the Looper. That was a great game.
Okay, but just to the first question I asked, can a Game 2 be an all-time great game? Or do you need the rest of the series to play out in a certain way?
How about Game 1 in 1988?
Well, that was a game where something portend. Yes.
I think baseball, all-time great games. When we live through those, we forget them very quickly because they get changed over. But baseball's about moments.
But I mean, if the Astros were to win out here, or win in 6 games, and this was the game that tipped the scale, I think history will view this a little bit differently, like Game 1 in '88. We have other baseball news of the day. Joe Girardi out, manager of the Yankees. First reported as a mutual decision. Then Girardi released a statement that said it was the Yankees who decided not to bring him back. This is a manager who's won a World Series and had a winning record every year of his 10 years, and it was a team that was 1 game from the World Series this year with a youth movement. Frank, this is your account. Does Girardi out sound right to you, or are the Yankees misplaying this?
You know what? It was 10 years, so maybe it's time for both parties to move on. I will say this. Lou Piniella at one point said the toughest job in the sport is going to be the guy that replaces Joe Torre. And when you look at the job that Joe Girardi did, 10 years, averaged 91 wins a year, won a World Series, always finished with a winning record. And he also had to, navigate Derek Jeter being at the end of the line, Mariano Rivera, Jorge Posada. Wasn't very easy to do. And look at the position the Yankees are in now. They were 1 win away from making the World Series. He did a great job.
When you're reading the reports that are out today that maybe the Yankees want a different type of manager, maybe Joe wasn't human enough, or maybe they want somebody who's analytical, what strikes you with that?
Well, first of all, human enough. He cried about 3 times during the playoffs because I think he knew this could be it for him. Jeff Van Gundy used to say, if they can't get you on results, they'll get you on relationships. I don't want to hear that now about Joe Torre. He did an excellent job the 10 years he was there. Joe
Girardi, of course. Bob Ryan, how about you?
I'm torn here. I understand the pros and cons on this one, but I'll say this: they're at a certain juncture in their history now with this new core of kids as the anchor for the foreseeable future. And I think that they really feel they want a different kind of personality. I'm sorry, Frank, but I really think that's what it comes to, because you can't refute 91 wins. And I always thought that, not always, I believe that his greatest work as a Yankee manager was done within the 3 years leading up to this year, when they were winning 84 to 87 games with all kinds of turmoil, all kinds of problems,
terrible
all kinds of injuries.
Yeah.
I thought he held them together wonderfully, and he deserves a lot of vote of thanks. But I can understand why you might say, okay, you did your job then, but this is now, and we have a future, and the future calls for somebody else.
Ramona Shelburne?
Yeah, I just think they better have somebody good in mind because Joe Girardi is like a really good manager. And if you were going to make a change after 10 years and as Frank explained, how he just artfully managed the end of guys that not only were the Yankee greats, but guys that he played with. Like, these were his team. I mean, to have to orchestrate that is a real feat as a manager. But now it's a new generation. It's a bunch of young kids who have come up kind of ahead of schedule. And I think the sense I got, I was listening to Michael Kay earlier this morning, who's the guy in New York who would know, right? A lot of this wears on Girardi, right? Like, he's a guy who I think everything to heart, and you saw that during the playoffs, right? You saw the emotion from him. And if you're going to be a long-term manager, a guy like a Mike Scioscia or a Bochy, right? If you're going to be somebody in that role for a long time, you've got to have a certain disposition. And after 10 years, maybe it was wearing on him.
Clinton Yates.
Joe Girardi was the old warhorse from a different generation of Yankees, but again, these are not, for lack of a better term, Hal Steinbrenner's father's Yankees. I understand completely why they're moving on from him. There's no shame on either side. He served his team well, and he's got other places he might be able to go, one of which I happen to live in if they can afford him.
Oh, you think he makes sense in Washington? Okay, all right.
Perfect.
A little bit more on what makes sense for the Yankees. As Ramona said, if you're replacing a guy, you got to bring in somebody who's just as good, right? Anyone want to throw out a name, Frank, that the Yankees turn to now?
Well, the fans want Don Mattingly, but he has a job right now. How about I'll give you a dark horse, Raul Ibanez? How about that?
Ooh.
Okay.
And yeah.
That got a lot of oohs and ahs. Oh, I wasn't expecting that. Okay, well, oohs and ahs. We're going to take a break right here, and as we do, we're going to go out with Vince Scully, because for me, this was the most perfect thing that existed in America last night. Were you guys a puddle watching this as well?
Yes.
Ramona, this is the voice of your life, Ramona. You grew up with this.
I honestly, I was just trying not to cry because then it was all over.
Finally, a guy from Fordham made it in this business.
Buy or sell.
Let's leave the baseball, go to basketball. Like Magic Johnson. Lakers 102, Wizards 99. Lonzo Ball, 6 points, 10 assists, 8 rebounds on 2 of 11 shooting. John Wall, 18, 9, and 3 on 7 of 22. Maybe the most torturous thing were those shooting percentages. A lot of hype in this game about Ball and Wall. What are you buying? What are you selling, Ramona?
Well, I'm buying the fact that the Lakers came to their rookie's defense. And I've seen a couple games now where teams are trying to punk him. They're trying to do things like Patrick Beverley did to him in the opener. And it's going to happen every night, and I haven't seen his teammates defend him. I thought that was a big step for them. And I also thought the fact he played decent defense on John Wall. John was just 2 for 7 when Lonzo was guarding him. And so Lonzo's not known as a defensive guy. He's sort of been dying out there defensively. So for him to actually turn in a decent performance was a positive sign.
Glenn Yates?
I'm selling everything about this from the Wizards. You lost the psychological battle to a sports dad, number 1. Number 2, John Wall, stop worrying about your MVP votes. Stop worrying about your All-Star votes or who's in a picture that SportsCenter is tweeting. Worry about who's on the court, and maybe you'll get a win in a nationally televised game.
All right. Wow, the volume really went up there. Frank Isola, how about you?
I want to see LeVar Ball against Clinton Yates. That would be pretty good, but Clinton happens to be right. If you're the Wizards, you finally played a high-profile game in October, and look at what you do. John Wall, fourth quarter and overtime, misses 9 of his last 10 shots. So I'm looking at him the second half against Boston, Game 7, this game. You know what? You want to be an MVP, you got to come through in those kind of games.
Bob Ryan.
I'm selling the Wizards, but I would like to point out that if somebody puts a body on Brandon Ingram, not that it would take much of a body to put on Brandon Ingram, and he doesn't tip in his own miss, and we don't even have this conversation because it would have been an L for the Lakers, and nobody be talking about all the wonderful things that were said about defending your teammate.
I'm glad it's a nice basketball game in October, but if you had the chance to go to a World Series game or Lakers versus the Wizards in the regular season, you're leaving the World Series to go to
baseball every
Lakers
time.
Wizards regular season? I'm not sure. I'm not putting words in your mouth, Ramona. I know you're gonna deal with Magic Johnson on both fronts.
No, I don't know how you leave a World Series game. I just don't know how you do that. And like, if we're, it's not Dave Roberts' fault. Maybe it's some, Don't
Buy or sell too.
Do you think you guys have the wherewithal to do that consistently week in and week out?
Next question.
Oh, my God.
Thank you. Probably
And out. Panthers say Cam Newton had spent 9 minutes answering questions, and in his mind, he fulfilled his obligation. Clinton, buy or sell?
I'm buying this, but for different reasons. Cam Newton's obviously having issues communicating, and I think what we move to is something where he's got a media problem, which I don't care about, to sort of a sports psychology problem. This team is not very good. He looks bothered on that dais. If I'm the Panthers, I try to figure that out from a competitive standpoint, not a PR standpoint.
So you think the media part of this, it doesn't matter. Fans don't care about. The team shouldn't care about, but there might be something under the surface there from
I think as a matter of importance, the media is lowest in terms of what matters.
Isola?
Yeah, what matters is he's second in the NFL with 10 interceptions right now. Listen, he can escape the rush on the field, away from the media, but when you're the quarterback of the team, you got to stand there. You're the leader of the team. He comes across looking a little immature in that situation.
Bob Ryan?
Yeah, I'm wondering what the real inside the locker room reaction is. He's supposed to be the face of the team, and I'm his sponsors. I'm a guest, so I'm selling him big time.
Shelburne?
Yeah, I mean, that face. Like he's been in the spotlight so long to know that when you do that, when you just roll your eyes and then take the quickest route out of the room, you're gonna get a reaction.
Okay.
Like we're all gonna know it. I'm sorry,
right.
I couldn't help it.
But let's all rate Ramona Shelburne's funny. The quickest route out of the room. Thumbs up or thumbs down, Clinton, Frank, Bob. We like it.
I'll give you both thumbs down.
Yeah, I'll give you a point too. We'll move on. Dolphins Ravens tonight. Matt Moore filling in, and Joe Flacco bottoming out. His struggles this year have been real. Will that change tonight versus Miami? How much pressure's on him, Frank?
I wish there was a World Series game on tonight. Joe Flacco, I don't understand it. 31st rated quarterback in the NFL. I can't believe that he's this bad. A guy that was a Super Bowl MVP. But they didn't do a good job during the offseason of bringing in offensive players. They focused on the defense. They need to focus on the offense and that offensive.
Bob Ryan?
Let me ask you a question. His salary is 8 figures and the first digits are 2. Is that correct?
That is correct,
that right?
Yes.
Next question.
Okay, do you believe then, let me ask you in the next question, that the Ravens should be maybe starting now, beginning to think about life without Joe Flacco?
Not with the backup they currently have. No, they need someone else.
Ramona Shelburne?
I mean, I still can't get over that he's the 31st rated quarterback in the NFL. Like like we had the discussion of whether he was elite a long time ago. I don't know if where we ever ended up on that.
I don't even ask that question.
There's so many quarterbacks that are so bad in the NFL. So for him to be 31st, it's like that Frank Caliendo sketch where he talking like dead left shrimp better than LeBron. Like, I mean, it's unbelievable.
Well, okay, now you're doing stand-up material, and I don't know if I can handle that from Plasma One right now. Woody Page isn't here. Clinton Yates, the idea that maybe the Ravens should be thinking beyond Joe Flacco, or whether you think he can get out of a slump right now tonight against Miami.
Where they need to be thinking beyond Joe Flacco is the NFL draft. Forget about the people that are actually on that roster. This is legitimate at this point. You got a ring out of him. He was a mid-round, first-round pick. You can't have expected this to really have gone that much longer. I don't care how much money you gave him. Start looking on that draft board, Ravens.
You might not care how much money they gave him. They might care because it is going to be a salary cap hit going forward of 24, 26 for each season, whether he's on the team or not. Shelburne? Ryan, it's been a pleasure having you guys here today, but we got a Clinton. Clinton Yates, Francis Abagnale Isola in Showdown. Good luck. San Francisco 49ers survey they put out to their fans. Is it that important your team wins? Very important? Important? Moderately important? Slightly important? Not important. Clinton, I got to ask, is that a question the 49ers should be asking?
It's a question that a lot of franchises wish they had the stones to ask as well. They're going through a generational change in their fan base. Never mind where that stadium is. This is very smart, in my opinion. I, for one, go to games to hang out with my friends and have a good time. Winning and losing is just sort of, I don't know, an aside on some level.
Where have you gone, Joe Montana? The San Francisco 49ers, who really now are in Santa Clara, are asking their fans if winning is important. Obviously, it's not that important to you, considering the product that you've been putting on the field and where that stadium is, because you took the heart right out of San Francisco and moved to that terrible place that nobody seems to like. And it's too hot.
Goodness. Clinton Yates, this is an incredible argument you just made in the show.
I said everything he said.
At least 10 points right now, but it doesn't matter because, you're just having a good time hanging out with friends. So we'll move on. Showdown 2. You calling it fair and foul, and Trevor Booker here. For sliding into the Cavs CEO, Frank.
Oh, come on. First of all, everybody got a big laugh out of it, but I know what he was saying. Please put J.R. Smith, Jay Crowder, and Tristan Thompson back in the game. They only had 10 points. Meanwhile, LeBron James, second night of a back-to-back, 2 bum ankles, he gets a triple-double. Where are the rest of his teammates? That's what Trevor Booker was saying. Put those
When I'm
boys
watching this show, I don't care who wins. When I'm playing this show, I
late.
absolutely do care
Too
who wins.
late,
Which is why
Clinton.
Trevor Booker is smart, because he jumped into that huddle making for what is the best piece of entertainment possible, which is when somebody doesn't know that an enemy is behind their lines and they figure it out. Tyronn Lue.
This is the best entertainment possible. Minus 25 in a showdown. Congratulations, Clinton. We've all had fun here, but Frank Isola's taking the FaceTime.
Yeah. How was that game day experience? All right, Lauri Markkanen, the rookie for the Chicago Bulls by way of Finland. By the way, his parents played basketball. His brother plays professional soccer over in Germany. He wanted to wear number 24. So what did he do? Did he call up Bill Cartwright, who won 3 championships wearing that number? Of course not. He wasn't born yet when Bill Cartwright won that last and 3rd championship with Chicago. He called up Brian Scalabrine, who played in 46 games for the Bulls, and asked the White Mamba, my radio partner, if he could wear number 24.
Oh.
That's respect. For the White Mamba, crazy, but it's respect.
That really happened. That's not Scalabrine,
See what you invited?
telling a tale there.
That is a true story.
All right.
100%.
Clinton
Ask
Yates,
Bob.
minus 25.
Like a
I mean, I think
Cameroon
that's...
move or something.
You may not have won, but that's the win of the day. We're on a 23.5-hour break. We'll see you tomorrow.
Pardon the interruption, but I'm Mike Wilbon. It is Internet.